There is a single window of time, every single morning, that determines more about your kidney health than almost anything else you will do that day. It lasts roughly 30 minutes. Most people walk straight through it without a second thought, reaching for coffee, rushing to the bathroom, checking their phone, starting their day exactly the way they always have. And in doing so, they miss the one habit that I have come to consider, after 20 years of treating older adults, the single most protective thing a person over 60 can do for their kidneys before anything else happens. Well, I'm Dr. Naira Stein, Senior Health and Wellness Consultant, and today I want to walk you through exactly what that window is, why it matters so specifically for kidneys that have already lived 60, 70, or more years inside your body, and what the very first thing you do each morning should actually be. This is not a complicated supplement protocol. It is not an expensive intervention. It is something almost embarrassingly simple, and I think that simplicity is precisely why it gets overlooked by people who assume real medical advice has to be complicated to be effective. Stay with me. I promise this is worth the next few minutes of your morning. Before I tell you what the rule is, I want you to understand why mornings, specifically, are such a uniquely vulnerable period for your kidneys. Because without that understanding, the advice itself will feel arbitrary, and arbitrary advice is advice people don't follow. While you sleep, your body is not simply resting. It continues to lose fluid steadily through several channels that never pause, even during your deepest hours of sleep. You lose water through respiration. Every breath you exhale carries water vapor out of your body. And across 6 to 8 hours of sleep, this adds up to a meaningful volume. You lose water through perspiration, even in a cool room, as your body continues its baseline thermoregulatory processes. And critically, your kidneys themselves continue producing urine throughout the night, even as they shift into the more concentrated, water-conserving mode that healthy kidneys use to minimize fluid loss while you sleep. The result of all of this is that by the time you wake, your body exists in a state of mild, entirely normal, but physiologically significant overnight dehydration. Your blood volume is slightly reduced compared to where it was when you went to sleep. Your blood is, correspondingly, slightly more concentrated, carrying the same load of waste, products, minerals, and metabolic byproducts in a smaller volume of fluid than it had the evening before. This is true for every person at every age. It is a universal feature of human physiology and nothing to be alarmed about on its own. But here is where age changes the equation in a way that matters enormously. In a younger person, kidneys with full filtering capacity manage this mild morning concentration effortlessly. Robust blood flow, a full complement of functional nephrons, and efficient hormonal regulation correct the imbalance quickly once fluid intake resumes. In someone over 60, the kidneys are working with meaningfully reduced reserve. Nephron number has been declining gradually since roughly the age of 40. Blood flow to the kidneys has diminished. The organs are simply less equipped to absorb a sudden additional burden during a period when they are already managing reduced circulating fluid volume. And this is precisely the moment when most people, instead of supporting their kidneys with what they actually need, do the opposite. They reach first for coffee, a mild diuretic that increases fluid loss through urine at the exact moment the body is already running a fluid deficit. Or they eat breakfast immediately, asking the kidneys to begin processing dietary waste products, sodium, and protein before fluid balance has been restored. Or they take morning medications and supplements with nothing more than a small sip of water, delivering compounds that require adequate fluid for safe processing into a bloodstream that is already concentrated. Every one of these common morning patterns asks the kidneys to perform their most demanding overnight to daytime transition work while operating at a fluid deficit. Over years and decades, this repeated daily pattern, mild morning dehydration compounded by the first substances most people introduce into their body, represents a quiet, cumulative burden on organs that are already managing reduced reserve capacity. This brings me to the rule itself, and I want to state it as plainly and directly as I can, because I think clarity matters more than drama here. Before coffee, before breakfast, before any medication or supplement, before anything else enters your body in the morning, drink a full glass of plain water, roughly 12 to 16 ounces, within the first 30 minutes of waking. That is the entire rule. I know it sounds almost too simple to be the foundation of everything else I am about to explain, but I want to walk you through exactly why this specific sequence, at this specific time, produces effects that genuinely matter for kidney health in a way that drinking the same amount of water later in the day simply does not replicate. When you introduce a meaningful volume of fluid into your body immediately upon waking, before anything else, you accomplish several things simultaneously that align precisely with what your kidneys need most during this vulnerable transition period. First, and most directly, you begin correcting the overnight fluid deficit before any additional burden, caffeine, food, medication, is introduced. Your kidneys receive the raw material they need to restore normal circulating blood volume before they are asked to process anything else. This is sequencing that respects the body's actual physiological state, rather than ignoring it. Second, morning water intake on an empty stomach is absorbed more rapidly and completely than water consumed alongside food. When the stomach is empty, water passes through into the small intestine for absorption within minutes, rather than being held back by the digestive process that accompanies a meal. This means the fluid you drink first thing in the morning reaches your bloodstream and from there, your kidneys, faster than water consumed at almost any other point in the day. For kidneys already managing a fluid deficit, the speed of that restoration matters. Third, and this is the mechanism I find most compelling from a kidney-specific perspective, adequate hydration directly supports the kidney's filtration efficiency through a measurable physiological pathway. The glomerular filtration rate, the standard measure of how efficiently your kidneys are filtering blood, the same GFR number that appears on your lab results, is directly influenced by blood volume and blood pressure within the kidney's microscopic filtering structures. When you are mildly dehydrated, blood volume and pressure within these structures decrease, and the kidneys respond by activating compensatory mechanisms involving the hormone vasopressin, which signals the kidneys to retain water and concentrate urine further. This is a normal and healthy response in the short term, but chronic, repeated activation of this compensatory pathway, morning after morning, year after year, has been associated in research with measurably faster decline in kidney function over time compared to individuals who maintain more consistent hydration, particularly during the vulnerable morning hours. There is also a mineral concentration dimension worth understanding. Throughout the night, while urine output continues at a reduced but ongoing rate, the concentrations of waste products and minerals in your urine, and correspondingly in your blood, before that urine is produced, gradually rise. This is precisely the period when substances like calcium oxalate, which form the basis of the most common type of kidney stone, have their greatest opportunity to crystallize, because they exist in their most concentrated state in the urine sitting in your bladder and the urine being produced by your kidneys during early morning hours. Drinking a substantial volume of water immediately upon waking dilutes this overnight concentration rapidly, reducing the window during which crystal formation is most likely to occur. For older adults who face meaningfully elevated kidney stone risk compared to younger populations due to decades of accumulated dietary and metabolic factors, this morning dilution effect is one of the most practical, low-effort interventions available. I want to address something directly because I know it will be on the mind of many of you listening. What about coffee? I am not telling you to give up your morning coffee, and I want to be completely clear about that. Coffee, consumed in moderate amounts, is not the kidney villain it is sometimes portrayed to be. In fact, several large population studies have found neutral or even mildly protective associations between moderate coffee consumption and long-term kidney health. The issue is not coffee itself. The issue is sequencing. Coffee's mild diuretic effect, consumed on top of an already fluid-depleted body, asks the kidneys to manage additional fluid loss before they have had the chance to recover from the overnight deficit. Drinking your full glass of water first and allowing even 10 to 15 minutes before your coffee changes the physiological starting point your kidneys are working from when that coffee does arrive. You are not eliminating coffee from your life. You are simply giving your kidneys the support they need before introducing something that asks more of them. The same principle applies to morning medications and supplements, and this is a detail that deserves particular attention for those of you managing blood pressure medications, diabetes medications, or any of the common prescriptions that become part of daily life after 60. Many of these medications are processed and excreted through the kidneys, and many require adequate fluid volume to be safely metabolized and to avoid concentrated exposure of kidney tissue to the medication itself. Taking morning medications with a small sip of water on top of an already dehydrated overnight state can mean that those medications reach the kidneys in a more concentrated form than intended. Establishing the habit of a full glass of water before medications, not instead of the water you take medications with, but as a preceding step, ensures that by the time those medications are processed, your kidneys are working from a position of adequate hydration rather than deficit. I also want to speak to those of you who have been told, perhaps by a well-meaning friend or something you read online, that you should be drinking 8 glasses of water spread evenly throughout the day, and that the specific timing of morning hydration doesn't particularly matter as long as the daily total is met. I want to gently push back on that idea, because the research on kidney physiology specifically suggests that timing matters considerably more than most general hydration advice acknowledges. The kidneys do not experience your day as a flat, undifferentiated period requiring a steady drip of fluid. They experience distinct phases: the overnight concentrating phase, morning transition, the active daytime filtering period, and the evening wind down toward overnight concentration again. Addressing the specific physiological needs of the morning transition phase, rather than simply averaging your fluid intake across the day, is what produces the targeted benefit we have been discussing. There is a practical question that comes up often in my consultations, and it deserves a direct answer. Should this water be cold, room temperature, or warm? The honest answer from the available research is that temperature has a relatively minor effect compared to the simple act of consuming adequate volume at the right time. Some people find warm water more comfortable on an empty stomach, and there is modest evidence that warm water may support slightly faster gastric emptying, which would marginally accelerate the rate at which the fluid reaches your bloodstream. But I would rather you drink a full glass of cold water consistently every single morning than a smaller, more hesitant amount of warm water because you were waiting for the kettle. Consistency of the habit matters significantly more than the specific temperature of the water delivering it. I want to mention one more layer to this conversation because I think it deepens the significance of what might otherwise sound like a simple piece of advice. The habit of morning water intake, sustained over months and years, does something beyond the immediate physiological benefits we have discussed. It establishes a baseline pattern of attentiveness to your own hydration status that tends to extend throughout the rest of the day. Patients who adopt this morning habit consistently report anecdotally and in my own clinical observation over many years, that they become more aware of their hydration needs generally, noticing thirst earlier, recognizing the early signs of dehydration like darker urine color or mild headache, and adjusting their fluid intake throughout the day in response. The morning glass of water is not simply a single beneficial act. It is the foundation of a broader pattern of kidney-conscious behavior that compounds in value over time. For those of you managing specific kidney conditions, heart failure, or fluid restrictions prescribed by your physician, I want to be clear that this guidance is intended for older adults without a specific medical reason to limit fluid intake. If you have been told by your doctor to restrict your fluid intake for any reason, that instruction takes precedence over everything I have shared today, and you should follow it precisely. This conversation is for the much larger population of older adults without such restrictions, for whom adequate morning hydration represents a genuine, accessible, and evidence-supported opportunity to support kidney health. I want to close with something I find myself returning to often in conversations with patients about prevention. We tend to imagine that meaningful health interventions need to be complicated, expensive, or dramatic to actually matter. A new medication, an advanced procedure, a complex supplement protocol with a dozen different components taken at precise intervals. And certainly, some health problems do require exactly that level of intervention. But kidney health, for the vast majority of older adults without an existing diagnosed condition, is shaped far more by the accumulation of small, consistent daily choices than by any single dramatic intervention. The glass of water you drink in the first 30 minutes after waking, repeated every single day for years, represents exactly this kind of accumulation. Small, almost invisible in any single instance, but genuinely consequential over the span of a decade. Your kidneys have already carried you through 6, 7, or more decades of life without complaint, without pain, without ever asking for the recognition they deserve. The first 30 minutes of your day is one of the few moments where you have a direct, simple, and genuinely effective opportunity to give something back to them before anything else competes for their attention. Tomorrow morning, before the coffee, before the breakfast, before anything else begins, reach for a full glass of water first. It is the simplest rule I know, and it may also be the most important one.